Another thing I could talk about all day is Path of Exile 2. We're going to now be talking about Path of Exile 2, both the new reveals from today and some broader questions also. So let's dive into it. The star of the show today was the Ranger, which I had the pleasure of playing at the for a few hours myself, and it really showcases how much the impact of the WASD changes, that movement system, has had on the overall design of the game and skills. And I imagine now you've just like gone back and had to look at a bunch of different skills and think, how do we change this now to move?
Yeah. And honestly, it wouldn't be incorrect to say that the WASD change is partly responsible for the delay of PoE2 in some ways.
I thought so.
Because after we changed that, it's like, oh geez, like, and it's like I almost knew this would even. It's like as soon as I was like playing it, I'm like, oh man, like there's gonna be so many things people are gonna want from this. And it's like, yeah, like you do something like that, and then now every class has to change a lot. And we haven't, I think, even yet still fully explored all the implications of that around for some of the different classes. But so like yeah, it's just changed a huge amount. And the thing is, as we look at each class again, it's like, well, like, so we at the demo we did in LA, which we didn't show here on stream, by the way, but there'll be footage of it coming out from the various streamers who were there. We also showed the fact that when we went back to the warrior again, which is a class we already showed, and then we were looking like we're playing around with WSD for melee, we kind of like immediately kind of had this like feeling of like, oh, now that we've got like facing direction being a thing, we'll be able to have active block now, because you can choose your facing direction. You can have a button to raise your shield up, and that will mean that that feels good with WSD too. So like that's another example of just like you add this, you go to another existing class, like, oh man, now we could have this, and then go to another class and oh man, we could have this, and like it's just kind of turned into this giant mountain of repercussions for everything. So yeah, it's been a bit crazy.
It seems like it's a really good option now for you to distinguish the classes and the skills further now too, because you can have like the slippery, elusive ranger where nearly all of its skills can be shot while moving, or you have the warrior where nearly everything is a bit more stationary, a bit more explosive in that regard. Have you found that?
Well, I don't know that don't know that I'd say that the warrior is particularly stationary, because every skill has movement in it. But what it does have is the fact that, and the other thing as well is you don't lose control of your character either, even while you're moving. It's just that you're more, but it certainly is dangerous when you've got a slower skill, even when it's moving a bit. Like, so that it's called rolling slam now. The rolling slam skill, like you have to choose when to use that, and that is definitely a feature of the warrior that for the ranger you don't feel the same way, right? Like on the ranger you can definitely just kind of like you feel very free to move around all the time, so like that is a hugely different feel. But at the same time, we always want to make sure that there's that feeling of like I've still got control of my character. I can still do what I need to do. So even when you've got like this sort of slower attacks on another class, there's still like a feeling of control, or at least ideally there should be. Yeah, like that's I guess that's sort of ultimately really important to me. You just never feel like you're losing control of your character.
How does the fact that like you'll have these differences in movement between different skills and potentially builds, affect things like boss and monster design, and how do you like balance against classes that do have to stop a bit more?
This is the other big thing, is that like I tell Mark, hey, we're adding this now, and he's like, oh my god, we have to go through all the monsters again.
It was like it was dodge roll, and then it's like, oh no, like we have to go through and make sure like every monster, every skill, everything we have to go, can you be dodge rolled or can you not be dodge rolled?
Right.
And we have to make that decision. And then it's like, finally we got through all of them. Oh, and here's active block. I'm like, oh no.
Well, so yeah, because we've added now an indicator on attacks that implies they're unblockable. That means they're unblockable. But also all the bosses have to make sure that there's the right ratio of blockable to unblockable attacks.
And there's a few things you cannot get wrong. You cannot have the AoE look like one thing and it is actually another thing. Very bad. If you have a telegraph or anything and it looks like it's going to do a 20 radius and it does 30 radius and damage, people will immediately, even on one boss, people will be like, this game has bad hitboxes and blah, blah, blah. And then the other thing is if you all of a sudden are using active block and a skill that you think should be blockable isn't blockable, and we don't like telegraph that properly, again, you'll have the same problem where you now don't trust that feature throughout the whole game. So it's like, not only do you have to get it right, you have to be ultra meticulous with it and just be like, should this be blockable? Should this not be blockable? You have to ask several people like what they feel, because sometimes it's in a gray area, and generally if it's in a gray area, you have to say yes, it is blockable, because 50% of people will think it is so. And so yeah, holy, the amount of times you have to go through all those monsters and change everything is not low.
But then even with like moving while shooting on the ranger, because then once again you need to make sure the monster composition of each area has monsters that can catch up to you and hurt you even while you're moving, which is actually a little bit more complicated than initially seems, because just even the smallest amount of movement, like depending on what the monster attack times are, will cause you to not get hit. So then there's like a whole bunch of tweaking you have to do there as well.
There's a lot more monsters that have a kind of step or lunge attack as well to counteract this now. Right. So when they run up to you for the first time, in order to maintain momentum, the same thing the player does, they leap forward and attack, and that has the capacity to hit a moving target. But even projectiles on bosses, it's like, if you are moving just a tiny bit, like a projectile is going to miss. And so now you have to think, okay, should it have predictive firing? Or do we just have to increase the speed enough? Like,
we've added tracking to way more boss abilities. So the tracking has to be way tighter. So like with even with the first boss, we had to upgrade the tracking to to target you so that you have to dodge roll way towards the end of the attack, because then the moment you've got moving while shooting on one class, it's like, well, that means that that class was just trivially moving away from that ability. So suddenly the boss tracking has to get an upgrade, and like everyone kind of has this thing, but the repercussions have just been immense. But I think it is worth it.
Oh, it feels so much cooler and so much better when we get that right. Like 100%. Yeah.
That was going to be my response. Like with the hands-on, like the boss fights, they feel incredible. And I noticed what you said, where you have to you really have to get good at skilling the dodge, because it needs to be right before it goes off, not like the early dodge, which is something I'm much more used to doing. And in Path of Exile 1, you only get hit when you stop moving, so I can see how that was like an issue here.
We are certainly getting away from the just run in circles for 99% safety. And I think that is an absolutely amazing thing. You still kind of run in circles just because you do dodge generally in one direction over another, but like it's not just I am 100% safe while doing orbits around monsters or a boss. There's a lot less of that, which again makes everything just feel way more engaging, and you can't just, I mean, if you want to pause, you don't need to run in circles now. You can just pause and take a breather.
I know this is blown out the beta dates for you, and it's been a lot of work, but the net result here should be far, far better.
Well, gameplay. I certainly think so. Like, it's just, I felt really bad about missing that deadline, but it's at the end of the day, if we have found a game that is better than the one we were making before, then we have to make that game instead of what we were making before, regardless of if it pushes the date out. So that's ultimately, I think. And to be fair, it wasn't just that. There's certainly when we came to do polish, and it's interesting actually going back in. So it's been so long since we really polished the start of a game before. And it's weird bringing back all the memories of what we actually did back in the early days of PoE1 that I'd actually totally forgotten about, all the little details about actually doing that again. It's it's actually kind of really interesting going back again and doing it. But I had forgotten what it takes to get the start of a game to feel good, and it took longer to get Act 1 to a right state than we expected. The annoying part about it, especially, is that we kind of only really realized this as we had kind of, I would say probably a month and a half ago, that this wasn't going to happen in time. And we had already booked in everything for the event that you went to, and then now we were in this ultra crunch scramble of we have to get this to be good enough for all of these influencers who are going to be playing the game and recording it and so on, and ready for that. And I think that even what we delivered there, even though I think it was great if you played in a similar way to what we have been, or things like that, there were actually some balance holes you could fall into that meant you had a really bad time. And I do worry that some people kind of fell into those holes and just didn't end up having a good time with it because of that. And so that's kind of probably one of the more eye-opening things to me is there was way more variance in the experience than I was hoping for. and like some, as I said, just some people just like ended up with the like not finding good items, like not find like or just like the skills they happened to pick, the combinations that were like ones that just didn't like work as well as others and things like that. And so that's a bit unfortunate. But if you did have the good experience, I think that like there were certainly people there who got the experience we wanted to show them, and it's really good to see that anyway. So hopefully you were one of the people who sort of found that you had some good stuff going on. But I'm obviously very interested to hear more about your feedback in particular.
Yeah, that's the interesting question I kind of have from this, is that like there's no doubt this is a very difficult game. Path of Exile 2 is very challenging, but myself and a lot of the other creators I talked to really like enjoyed the way that the difficulty was done, and especially the boss fights I felt were incredible. I really, really enjoyed them. But it was very easy to see people who didn't have such a good time. Yeah. And so, like, where do you want to try and get this game? Like, and how do you balance these two things?
It is very hard, and I think that it's especially hard due to the fact that because the bosses have learnable mechanics, like it's hard for me to go and have an objective like play session on another class because I already know the boss, and so like that means that to actually find out, I have to watch people play who haven't played before, like play again, and that makes it really, really hard. So like even like I will. If the mechanics of the boss gets changed, I will then I will be dying, and like I think that's great. But once I'm no longer dying anymore, that doesn't necessarily mean there aren't still things that other people are gonna have trouble like learning or doing. But I think the worst one is that and I think people ran into here as well, is that there's something about the item system in PoE 2 now that's leading to too much variance. And we're actually, I was discussing with Mark before this what's going on there, because it's not obvious to me yet even why that is. Like the things like the amount of IPD you can get in a weapon and so like that, these are basically the same as what they were in PoE 1. We haven't really changed the mod pool very significantly. So like there's not a lot of changes there, and yet the experience that people are getting with regard to whether their items are good or not seems like the variance seems to be higher. So I need to like find out what's going on with that and like see if I can address it. But I think that what it might end up being is that we have to try it. Like it can be subtle stuff like to do with quest rewards or like what's going on with the shop and things like that. We can give people tools to be able to fix their own itemization problems, so they don't fall into the whole like, oh, I just didn't find a weapon, like that kind of problem. Like it really sucks.
I think it's the issue of small sample size, right? Not in terms of the number of players, but in terms of the number of items you're getting. Like there's a scarcity to the items in PoE 2, which overall felt really good, but it does mean that when there's like generally a lower number of items dropping,
right.
There's a bit more chance that one player will have a rare bow and the other one will have a white bow.
There's definitely that element, but the hope is that gold would help with that. So that you can use gold to effectively you get to choose your own drop. I don't know how much you engaged with the shop in particular.
I did,
so like knowing to go to the, like, 'cause that's the thing, like in PoE 2 the shops matter a lot more because they actually have good items in them. Like there's like it's like majority blues and above in the shop. Like that sort of helps, but it's like that sort of stuff, like but then okay, there's one other thing though that I would say is that and this is another one which I'm not sure about, but it's sort of interesting to me, is that when we've been doing our first time user experience testing, the feedback has not actually been that the difficulty is too high. And I think that might be partly to do with like an expectation calibration, where it's like, because these people in those tests have not played PoE before, they're not expecting anything one way or the other about how difficult of an experience it is. So they, I guess, might be kind of like more fine with the difficulty actually, which seems kind of counterintuitive. Like,
this is just what it is. This is the game.
Like a new player is actually like, oh, the difficulty's fine. Like this is just a difficult game. You know what I mean? Whereas like a PoE 1 player might be like, this is so much harder than PoE 1. Which is like kind of a weird situation that I did not expect before doing this event that we just did. So that's kind of an interesting one as well. But there's quite a lot of things there that are going on. But we really have to get that nailed, and it's going to require I think a lot of good alpha testing and things like that as well to make sure that everything there is good.
It might be a thing where it's something you have to approach with a safety net mindset, where you have like things like you mentioned, having some gold so that the safety net can be items from the shop. And another idea that myself and a bunch of the other creators kind of discussed at the event was the idea of like having a slow passive flask charge generation so that as a safety net, players who are struggling in a boss fight can play defensively and slowly get flasks back that they can use to keep it stay alive.
I certainly agree that what I don't want to do is a change that will push the top end up as either, because the top end I think is fine. Like you can definitely feel powerful if you get good stuff. Like there's video footage that that I've seen of people killing some of the bosses, like still actually just like 10-second boss kills because they upgraded like to their bow or mace or whatever to like something like with an alk that was very juicy, and like things like that going on. So the top end is still absolutely possible to like really annihilate shit, but it's that bottom end, like people falling into holes, that I'm concerned about right now.
It's a fascinating like design problem to approach.
Right.
This with Path of Exile 2, and I'm super interested in seeing how you guys have been evolving it and will continue to evolve it. Something I also noticed about like difficulty was, and it certainly came up at ExileCon, was the issue of stuns, getting stunned by monsters, just how brutal they can be. I felt like it was definitely better here. I don't know if it was just me getting better, or if you guys
changes were made, so it should have been better.
Okay, but it still was something that the thing that stood out to me the most was like getting stunned while mid-air using escape shot on the ranger. And
that should not be the case. There should be iframes in that skill, certainly.
Okay, so
I think that might
not quite right.
We did have a discussion recently where a number of those like jumping skills should effectively be kind of considered to dodge rolling.
Yeah, we need to add it.
It can just get a bit abusive because you can just be like jump, and it. So we need to figure something out with that just to make sure it's not like
Well, that was my question actually. Was like, these skills, have you considered the idea of them having like when you are winding up you can be stunned, and when you're like winding down you can be stunned, but
it would have to be there's a short window in there, so that you don't feel like, well, you're literally like 5 meters in the air.
That'd be good.
You're getting hit.
It looked a bit weird.
Yeah.
Sometimes it did look quite cool and brutal when like a werewolf would do this like lunging attack and swat me out of the air. And I was like,
you probably want to make it so that like when you're 1 meter in the air you can still get hit, but as you're above that, then that's when the time when it doesn't. It also looks a bit silly when you get frozen when you're 5 meters in the air as well. So that one
we need fall damage.
Oh yeah, fall damage. Sure, why not? Yeah.
We're gonna have to push the beta back now because you're gonna design like a full Z level system and fall damage and.
Well, I mean, people I don't know. Have we even shown any areas with subscenes yet? I guess we might not have.
I'm not too sure.
There are multi-story dungeons and where you can see from one floor to the other in PoE 2. I don't know if we even showed that anywhere, but anyway, whatever.
So it's certainly a shame about the delayed beta, though. It's pretty understandable given it's not like you hear about the idea of like feature creep in a lot of game design, but here it's kind of the opposite, where it's like core game design creep. Right. It's like you guys have discovered things that you want to do way more impressively with the core game, right? But for looking forward to the beta, what will the beta end up looking like? Actually, I've been curious about this. Will it be like a full campaign, a partial campaign? Will there be end game?
Yep.
All of that? Yeah. Just
so basically, we want look, the intention here is that there's no point getting feedback on something. Well, I suppose it's entirely true given what we just did. But if the game isn't if I don't think it's good, there's no really a lot of point getting feedback from other players. And so what I'm saying with that is that what I'm really going for here is when we release the game, I want it to feel like I think it's a complete game from end to end and that it's a great experience. And then at that point, we get players to try it and see. I think that betaing just like one act or something, the only value that you could have in that is something like a load test or something like that. But I don't think you can actually get proper feedback for the whole game. So to me, you have to have the whole game. Maybe we don't have to have every single class, but I definitely think you have to have at least the campaign and the end game there. Now in the beta, what we won't have is so we'll have an end game in the beta, but it won't include all the end game content that the final game will have. But it will have an end game because you need that in order to be able to test the economy properly and so on, right? We need to know what happens when people get to max level and all of that other stuff. That has to be there. So I want that game to certainly the beta should feel like, here is a full game. Like I could have just, I could have just bought this as a new release, and that, and it would feel that good. But of course, the main thing is that we need to be able to, the reason why we'll call it a beta is because we need to be able to still make balance changes and be free with that, right? Because if we couldn't do that, then that would kind of defeat the purpose. So we absolutely need to have the freedom to still make balance changes after that point, but it should still feel like the complete game. Like this is the game, right? Sure, maybe it's missing a couple of classes, but that is the game with everything there you'd expect from a full game to have.
That's good to hear, because I think the difficulty with giving feedback after ExileCon was that they were pre-built characters, and that kind of misses the point of the game, because character building is such a big part of the game, right? With this event,
this is the reason why we want to do the LA event and actually get people like yourself to really try that. Once again, we got some really interesting information from that, like looking at that, because there were more holes than I expected. So there's clearly more work to do there. We
got to build characters, and you got to see stuff that you didn't expect. Like
for sure,
used in ways you didn't expect and stuff.
For sure.
That was pretty cool. You're like, oh, I didn't think anyone would use that skill that way.
Well, the one that was the most annoying, that was a total mistake, was the crossbow. Like there was some balance on the crossbows that was like left in there from when we did the Act 5 demo, where like it was just like, and then that all just kind of like fell back all the way to Act 1, and then people forgot to like actually balance that properly again. And the reason why is because like we didn't even the crossbows have their own skills built in, and the balance of those was not really correctly working with all of the regular scaling that we do for other weapon types.
I thought
so someone found one of those and then just proceeded to shotgun all the bosses down in like 5 hits.
Default attack the bosses with crossbows.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, this was not how this was supposed to go. So there's a few mistakes like that in there as well.
Yeah, these things happen. These things happen. So I think people are immensely curious about seeing endgame. We haven't seen any real endgame for this yet. What is it going to look like? What a character build's going to look like? How fast is the gameplay going to be? Is this something you can speak on or show soon?
I mean, we will definitely have to be showing it soon, but I think that a lot of it comes down to when we're finally able to really play through the whole game legit and and get there, because you just need to make sure that you're feeling the power progression as you go through the game going up and up. One thing that we haven't really been showing a lot until the Ranger demo just now was actually using support gems. We just haven't really been showing too much of it. And in the Ranger there, we finally showed like a couple there, but that certainly was not like a full 6 links for everything, which is what it's going to be in endgame. Even just with in the Ranger demo there, when you started to add like multi-proj and chain to a couple of things, you start to see the kind of crazy power that you expect to see from PoE. And so it will certainly go even crazier than that. I guess what's harder to say is, okay, like I don't want it to be just like the whole screen is covered to the point where you can see nothing about what is going on. It needs to still be at a somewhat, like, just from a visibility perspective, it needs to look reasonable, even if you are covering the screen in lightning explosions. There still needs to be some understanding of what the hell is actually happening. We want the feeling of power. Like, you want that fantasy of like I'm becoming a god. But we also need to try and make it so that there's still like some level of counterplay and interest in using different skills and like having a good time with the boss, even while you're feeling that way. And so that is the challenge, and that's what we have to try and hit.
I look forward to seeing how it plays out, because if I have any fear, it's actually that like you lose some of that impactful moment-to-moment gameplay that you're actually starting to capture with the earlier stages of the game.
Yes. Well, that is a concern, and what I want to try and not have. Like, I do want the boss fights to still feel very engaging, and I still even want, like, even in maps, I still want it so that there are sometimes white monsters where you're like, I have to do a bit of counterplay against this. Like, that to happen just sometimes. Not all the time, but just sometimes that can kind of happen.
It harkens back to like the early days of Path of Exile, where just devourers were scary, right? Like the monster type devourers were scary. And I felt that with like the werewolves in this one. The werewolves are just scary. They're fast.
Well, my favorite monster right now in the demo, the Eternal. I don't know if you fought against them or remember them, but the Eternal Knights in the Mausoleum and Tomb are the ones that have a shield, that they're just walking forward with a shield up. and if you hit them, then they shoot a projectile back at you, and so you have to
that's how
find a
that
way.
worked.
Yeah. So you have to find a way to kind of attack them without attacking them from the front, because they've got 100% block there. So you either attack them with an AoE skill from behind, or attack them from above, or like use a degen or something like that. There's like some kind of counterplay there. And as soon as I fought one of those, because I actually had not known that Mark was adding that mechanic to that monster. And as soon as I fought that, I like messaged him like, man, that monster is so cool. Like it's just really cool to sometimes have monsters like that just like you're like, oh shit, I have to think for a second, you know. I'm a fan.
Yeah. So specifically in that case, you when something is blocking, they still take stun damage, so they can still get
stun them. You can stun them out of it.
Good.
But you can also walk up to them and they start attacking, and then walk back and then attack them.
And then he'll have a moment in his animation where the shield goes more out like that, and then the blocking is disabled.
Right.
I didn't have to figure that out.
Yeah. but also if you use lightning arrows, you can like AoE them from behind, or like, you know, there's the poison burst, which will poison the guy even though he didn't take damage from the hit, and like there's so many ways, but it's like kind of interesting to have stuff like that.
Yeah. People noted the poison on the live globe. Is there other like display of these sorts of effects on characters?
I do want to do more of those. That was added really recently, and it was weirdly cool. Like I didn't expect that change to matter as much as it mattered. But it actually really does, and having more visibility for those different effects is really important. So I definitely want to do more. Like I think that there's definite candidates for shock and ignite and stuff like that, and bleeding, of course. Bleeding being one of those ones that would be good to have more visibility on. Like things like that. I think absolutely. I mean, increasing visibility of those mechanics, I think, is super important. Like we'll definitely do more of that, and I don't think we've exploited like the UI to the degree that we could have before. So like just that simple, just make the life orb green when you're poisoning something. Just it's weird how much it matters.
So I also noticed enemy mobs had better signaling of their effects as well, like a shield if they were protected or whatever by certain things.
And I want to do even better. Like I noticed I was just like I think there's more we can do around like feedback for when when your hit's not working, and I think there's like other stuff like that. Like there's just tons of stuff that we should do better there. As I said, these little tweaks, they matter a lot, so it's cool.
All right. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to both of you. Thank you very much for your extended time for the Q&A. I know people are eager to go check out the patch notes, and also all of the content that's released from the LA, as that embargo is up now. So all
right. So hopefully people are watching videos and and seeing what's going on.
So we will say see you later then, and thanks very much for watching, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah. See you later.
See ya.
All right.